In a year where the mandate for Brian Gutekunst is Super Bowl or bust, the Green Bay Packers can't go into the draft with needs. Goody has to do some shopping in free agency now.
You are Locked On Packers, your daily Green Bay Packers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Packers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Peter Bukowski, and I cover the Packers for The Leap, a newsletter I would love for you to subscribe to. Subscribe to the podcast wherever you get podcasts, iTunes, Apple. Oh, I did it again. God, Brandon Snyder is going to just tease me mercilessly over this one. Apple, Spotify. I've been saying iTunes for a long time. It's just a reminder of how long I've been doing this here. I feel old now. We are the number one Packers podcast on the internet, and the show for fans who know what happened. They want to know why and how. Thanks to everyone who makes Locked On Packers their first listen every day. We hope you like starting your day with us as much as we like starting our day with you here on the Locked On Podcast Network, the number one sports podcast network. We got some insight on Rich Bisaccia leaving the Green Bay Packers. There is a free agent linebacker I want to talk to you about, but let's start with that free agency piece. The Packers have to do some things to get their financial house in order. And we don't know what's going to happen with Rashawn Gary, but if it's going to happen, it's going to happen in the next week, less, because the new league year starts. And if they're going to do something with Elton Jenkins, whether it's a trade or release, it's going to happen in the next week because they're going to need, you got to be cap compliant by the new league year. We're going to start getting information on what's going on here. Is it going to be a Friday news dump? Just seems like that's what the Packers like to do. They don't really like to be, for a team that you would think would want all the attention because they're a smaller market team, and whenever they could grab some spotlight, maybe they would do that. They don't operate like that. But because they don't have a first round pick, because they don't have a cheap, easy way to infuse the team with talent, and because not having a first round pick just makes it that much more difficult to predict who of the best players in the draft you may have an opportunity to get, that amps up the urgency for Brian Gutekunst to have to go out and spend money. And there were two places he said at the combine he felt like they needed to add to these rooms to add some competition, and that was corner and that was linebacker. That's two spots in this draft where there are a lot of players. And where, as we talked about yesterday, the difference between the player you could have drafted at 20 and the player you could draft in the mid-50s may not be all that different. It may just be about preferences at that point. But corner is one of those spots where even if it turns out you're a good player, year 2, year 3, year 4, whatever, chances are, as a rookie, you're bad. Most rookies are bad. Almost every rookie corner is bad. It's one of the reasons I was so high on Eric Stokes, because he wasn't just good for a rookie. He was a good corner as a rookie. And to me, that portended a steep improvement curve for him. I wouldn't be surprised if they decided to say, hey, Eric, no hard feelings, but we'd love to have you back in Green Bay. I don't think that would be crazy at all, because what I could see happening here is you go out and at 3-4 positions, you get backstop options. Hey, you don't find the right player in the draft. You have a veteran who you know can play right now. You don't have to shop at the top of the market. You don't have to go out and get Tyler Linderbaum. But you need to have an option should the right player not present himself. Now, there are positions where I don't think you need to do that. Because let's say a nose tackle, for example. If you think that's what you need because you think Devontae Wyatt is going to get an extension, if you'd like to extend Devontae Wyatt, if you'd like for him to play well enough to give him an extension. Now, the Packers defensive tackle room gets awfully thin, awfully quick this time next year because Carl Brooks doesn't have an extension. Devontae Wyatt doesn't have an extension. And so there are real questions about what this defensive tackle room is going to look like. I'll be honest. I know I'm supposed to be excited about this defensive tackle class. I am not excited about this defensive tackle class. I've watched the top 8 or so guys. One of them is going to be available when the Packers pick, probably 3 or 4 of them. And I can't really get that excited about any of them, to be honest. And the guys that I think, when they're picking, you'd get excited about, I think are probably going to be gone. I've come back to the same player that I started with. I think he was the very first player in the pre-draft process that I put on your radar. And that was before I had even watched him, actually. So it's interesting that we've kind of come all the way back around. But that's Kristen Miller from Georgia, 6'4", 310. I just think that makes a lot of sense. Or if Caden McDonald were to fall, someone that could be that true nose tackle with some pass rush upside. But when it comes to nose tackles, unless you're going to get a truly elite player, someone who can be Justin Madubuike, someone who could be Kenny Clark, someone who could be a pass rushing, a Dexter Lawrence in his prime, you're not going to get that guy at 52. You're probably not going to get that guy in the first round. That guy is not in this draft, in all likelihood. Going the TJ Slayton round 3 dart throw route is totally fine to me. And then hoping you get some growth from Nazir Stackhouse. Stackhouse and Brinson are really the only guys moving forward that you're like, yeah, those guys could be players for you moving forward if they develop. But we're talking about late day 3 pick in Brinson's case and an undrafted free agent in Stackhouse's case. And Stackhouse showed nothing last year to lead you to believe that he can be a long-term piece in Green Bay. He has shown you nothing to lead you to believe he's an NFL player at this point in his NFL career. But I think you could get a nose tackle on day 3. Now, if what you want is a long-term defensive tackle piece, then yeah, maybe 52 is where you have to do that. Or maybe you go out into free agency and you sign someone like DJ Reader for $6-8 million. This is the world that I think the Packers are going to play in. Rather than try and sign one high-level free agent, one Xavier McKinney, for example, you sign 3. I hate to use the examples of Nate Hobbs and Aaron Banks because I think they make too much money, but more like the Christian Kirksey type player. $6, $7, $8 million. Those guys were, like the Devin Funchess contracts, the Christian Kirksey contracts. Those were like, $3-4 million, but the cap has gone up even since then significantly. And so inflation pushes the prices of those mid-level players up as well. Those middle-class players. I think you could get Matt Milano for $5-6 million. There are players out there that you could do that with. And you get guys where you just say, okay, if they were going to be the starter while you see if Tyron Hopper is ready, or they're going to be the player while you see what you can get developmentally from Warren Brinson or Nazir Stackhouse. By the way, I really like the upside of Warren Brinson. I think he's shown some flashes. Playing Lucas Van Ness more a little bit inside as a pass rusher, something he did at Iowa. He started his career as a 3 technique. Could he do that for you a little bit more in this scheme? Play a little bit more 5 technique. If you're going to play some of those traditional 3 down base, odd front defenses. I think you could do that if you wanted to. Baron Sorrell could do that, something he did at Texas as well. But they have to go into this draft because of the uncertainty with who you could potentially get more than in a normal year. I think you just, and you couple that with the Super Bowl window. It's right now. The chance to go in is right now. You can't go in saying, well, we got to come out with a corner. We got to come out with a defensive tackle. We got to come out with a linebacker. You can't go into the draft feeling that way. I do think at center you could get away with it. This is a deep center class. And I do think at nose tackle you could get away with it. But if you're going to stack the places where you need to get some guys, corner and linebacker are the spots. So to me, I would want a veteran corner. Someone in that Trayvon Diggs, Reek Woolen, Greg Newsome sort of price range. Eric Stokes would even be probably less money and be in a similar situation. Where, yeah, if that guy had to start for you or compete to start for you, you probably feel pretty good about it. And he probably feels like, hey, I'm better than those guys anyway. And I'm going to come in and feel comfortable right away in front of those home fans. I'm going to feel comfortable right away in a Packers-Bears, a Packers-Lions, a Packers-Vikings rivalry game right away in a playoff game against the 49ers or the Rams or the Seahawks. He's been in those moments. So that has to be where you set your focus in free agency. And then again, those there are veteran linebackers out there you could go get. Because linebacker, especially if okay, you move Edgerrin Cooper to the Mike, that would be great. I think they could do that. But they might not want to do that. They might want to just leave well enough alone with Edge and say, you be the run and chase linebacker on that team. That's fine. Again, I would like him, if they're going to play dime, for him to be the guy on that defense. Because you go out and you get a veteran like Matt Milano who doesn't run like he used to. All of a sudden, you're giving up something meaningful in coverage. I would like that to be Edgerrin Cooper. That makes it easier, I think, to pass that off. But I would still like to get another veteran player in there just in case that plan doesn't go exactly the way you want it, or the board doesn't fall exactly the way that you want it. And then you're stuck going, well, now what? Now, one of the options out there at linebacker just became available, would not count against the Packers comp pick formula, and is still young enough that I think you could make the case, if you're Brian Gutekunst, this is a guy who can play most of this contract for you. Let's talk about him next. This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. March is a time to celebrate women, especially around International Women's Day, and to recognize just how much they carry at work, in relationships, in families, and in all the unseen roles they step into every single day. It's easy to celebrate that strength, and it's just as important to make space for their emotional well-being. And honestly, that goes for all of us. My mom, my sister, my wife, my daughter, they're all incredibly important to me. And I'm not always going to understand exactly what's going on with them. The best way I can be there for them, though, is for me to have a better understanding of what's going on with me. How can I expect them to understand what's going on with me if I don't always understand what's going on with me? And talking to someone can help. Therapy can help. Creating balance, setting healthy boundaries, and supporting your overall well-being. With over 30,000 licensed therapists and more than 6 million people served worldwide, BetterHelp is the world's largest online therapy platform, and it works. Just fill out a brief questionnaire, get matched with a licensed therapist, and if it's not the right fit, you can switch at any time. Your emotional well-being matters. Find support and feel lighter in therapy. Sign up and get 10% off at betterhelp.com/lockedon. That's betterhelp.com/lockedon. The New York Giants are moving on from linebacker Bobby Okereke, and he is someone who, on the football field, I have been a fan of his game for a long time. He was someone, I believe, when the Giants signed him, that I advocated for Green Bay to sign. And so now that he is available, he's 29 and will turn 30 this year. He's not an old player, and linebacker is a spot where it's really more about your instincts, your know-how, and all of those things. Now, there are connections with him and all the people in Tennessee. He played for Mike Borgonzi. He played for Brian Daboll in New York. He played for Gus Bradley in Indianapolis. There are a lot of connections there. But at this point in his career, especially after spending all that time in New York, doesn't he want to win? Doesn't he want a chance to chase a Super Bowl? Like, this is probably going to be his last contract. Wouldn't you rather go to a place like Green Bay and help put that team over the top? And by the way, he's played with Xavier McKinney. I think the compensatory pick part is also real. If the Packers can find players who are cut and they sign those players, they don't count toward the comp pick formula. And I had someone in our Everydayer Club ask me to explain that a little bit more, the comp pick formula. Every free agent in is assigned a value based on their contract, based on how much money they get relative to their peers. And so Malik Willis getting 20, 25, $30 million, that would net the Packers probably a third round pick. Rasheed Walker getting $20+ million would probably net the Packers a third round pick. Now those picks convey after the fact, but they're very valuable for a team like the Packers, who for the foreseeable future, paying all the money that they're paying to Jordan Love and all the money that they're paying to Micah Parsons. And I'm going to talk about Micah Parsons' contract tomorrow. But they're going to have to pay Tucker Kraft. They just extended Zach Tom. That Edgerrin Cooper contract is going to come up before you know it. They're probably going to extend Christian Watson again on the extension. So they're going to have these decisions to make. You got to figure out what you want to do with Xavier McKinney. I think he could be the rare third contract player in Green Bay. So having a player, not that he's cost controlled, because you're still going to have to pay the free agent premium for him, but he does not count against your comp pick formula. And getting those picks for a team that's going to need cost control players, this is a big offseason for them. And all the more reason, back to the point that we made in the open, for them to go out and sign some of these mid-level free agents, because the way the comp pick formula works is it's players in and money spent going out. So if you have a couple guys on big free agent deals and then you spend on free agents, especially big money free agent deals, those offset. And so if you have to spend a bunch of money, now the Packers don't have a bunch of money to spend, but if they did, and Malik Willis got you a nice compensatory pick, if Rasheed Walker got you a nice compensatory pick, but then you go out and you spend $20 million on Rasheed Walker's replacement, you wouldn't spend 30 on Malik Willis as a replacement. But if you went out and spent $30 million on, if Max Crosby were a free agent, or Trey Hendrickson, someone like that, he's not going to get 30 either. But if you give him 20 or you give him 18, that works as part of the offset of the compensatory formula. So if you're the Packers, finding these little edges, finding players to sign that are of similar value. And by the way, once a player gets cut, like Tyler Biadasz, someone we talked about on this show, the Bears unfortunately, their center have a surprising retirement. Well, now they have to go find a center. Well, Tyler Biadasz is already on the market. They could do the same thing with Lloyd Cushenberry and say, okay, well, you can start having those conversations now. No waiting for the legal tampering period. No waiting for the actual free agency period to open. There's no waiting for post June 1. Those guys you could have in the building tomorrow. You could sign them to contracts tomorrow. The Packers could sign Bobby Okereke before the free agent signing period even opens. Now, usually those players will wait because of the feeding frenzy that results, and a rising tide lifts all boats. I hate to throw that many cliches in the same sentence, but the free agency markup is what it is. Now, you can also create a feeding frenzy. You can create the competition for your services now, because everyone wants to sign the guys now. Everyone wants to try and get ahead of this so they don't have to participate in the market that is going to get crazy in free agency. And so if you're an agent, you do have to weigh those things. And I think there's two sides to that coin, to be sure. If you're Tyler Biadasz, you may just want to pick your spot. Hey, I can go and start for a Chicago Bears team that, they want to run the football. I want to not have to pass that 50 times a game. Go play for the Bengals. Like, that could be appealing. And so maybe you get a chance to pick your destination without having to chase all that money. Tyler Biadasz, also an older player, has made a lot of money in his career. Same with someone like Okereke. Maybe it's more about fit for you. If the Packers wanted to sign Tyler Biadasz, presumably they could have done that. He's been out there long enough that, if they wanted to have that conversation, they could have had that conversation already. Biadasz reportedly meeting already with Chicago. Clearly they had an idea that this was going to happen before we got word that it was going to happen. Maybe he says it early in the week or last week or something, and they're already going, okay, what's plan B? What's plan C? To me, Okereke fits that idealized version of the kind of player we were talking about in the A block and fits the saving your powder, keeping your compensatory formula clean. This is something the Ravens do. This is something smart teams are thinking about and worried about. And maybe worry is the wrong word. Like you're not anxious about it, but you're cognizant of it. You're accounting for it in your accounting, right? Two different uses of that. And so if you're the Packers, you have an opportunity here to bring in a player who you would want to bring in anyway. If he were a free agent, he would be someone you would be looking at. Well, now he's going to be a free agent. And so we'll see how aggressive Brian Gutekunst wants to be. I think this will be a good tensile test and a good preview for what's to come next week. Now, we got more information from Tom Silverstein around Rich Bisaccia's departure from Green Bay. We'll put a bow on that and then hopefully never talk about it ever again.
Hey, it's Matt Derry from the Locked On Lions podcast. The people I love depend on me. If I'm gone, the financial responsibilities don't disappear. I didn't want my family figuring things out during the hardest moment of their lives. That's why I knew only one place to go. I chose life insurance through my friends at Ethos. Ethos makes getting life insurance fast and easy, 100% online. You can get a quote in seconds, apply in minutes, and get same-day coverage. There's no medical exam. You just answer a few simple health questions. You can get up to $3 million in coverage. Some policies are as low as $30 a month. I love the folks at Ethos. Protect your family with life insurance from Ethos now by going to ethos.com/LockedOnNFL. In as little as 10 minutes, you can get the free quote and up to $3 million in coverage at ethos.com/LockedOnNFL. That is ethos.com/LockedOnNFL. Ethos.com/LockedOnNFL. Application times and rates may vary.
Rich Bisaccia wanted to stick it to the Packers. Well, no. But I appreciate Tom Silverstein taking on that concept head on, because that is something that there is a perception that, you know, he wasn't getting what he wanted from Matt LaFleur, that there were disagreements about the kinds of players. And look, I have had some discussions over the last couple of weeks about this since the story broke and since before Rich Bisaccia decided to leave, about who's pulling the strings, who's making the decisions that's handcuffing the special teams. And my understanding of it now is that Matt LaFleur was saying, I don't want Keyshawn Nixon returning kicks. I don't want Elton Jenkins on field goal. Now, they did move on, you know, Xavier McKinney and Evan Williams and Javon Bullard and some of these starters out there covering kicks and those kinds of things. They don't do things like draft returner onlys. They don't change their model to draft slot corners. Like Javon Bullard is a little undersized. They would, if he were a corner, they would not have drafted him to be a corner, but he's a nickel, he's a safety. And also, you know, they drafted him to be a safety. And their models are a little different at safety than they are at corner. But that's also because it's a different position, safety, number one, but also nickel. You play in the slot, it's a different set of skills that you need to have. What Silverstein also mentions is multiple sources told him this was not about the resources he was given. This was not about Matt LaFleur saying, you can't have this, you can't have this. Because eventually, by the end of the year, you know, your best offensive linemen were on field goal block. Your best defenders, at least the guys that you'd want covering kicks, were out there covering kicks. This was not really, you know, an issue by the end of the year. But multiple sources, according to Silverstein, said this was really for Rich about being closer to his family, who apparently must be in the South somewhere. He's going to Clemson, reportedly. And the workload, the ask, is just not the same in college. You don't have to work 70-hour weeks In the NFL, you do know he's going to make less money, but he's also made a lot of money over his career, and he's been coaching for 40 years. Now, I got some pushback on socials when I suggested that part of this might be the fact that the fan base freaking hates this guy. And, coaches don't care about that stuff. They don't listen to fan base sentiment. Well, I don't think Matt LaFleur is changing his play calls based on fan sentiment. But I do know that after he answered questions, multiple questions about Rashawn Gary and how much he's playing and how often he's asking out of games, all of a sudden Rashawn Gary's playing 75% of snaps, playing his highest snap count games of the season right after those questions are being asked. It's why it's important to continue to have those questions. It's why it's important to have people in the room who know the game well enough to have to ask those questions and know to ask those questions. He's a human being. These are. I understand that it can be easy to view the game and the coaches involved and the front office people. The front office people are heartless bean counters and cold evaluators, and it's all just down the line, black and white business only. No. What happens at the combine, the recency bias of that, the experiential bias of that, seeing it in person, seeing Mike Washington Jr. be the most athletic running back ever, seeing Sonny Styles be the most athletic linebacker ever at the combine. These are human beings. Of course, that is going to impact your perception of those players as prospects. And so if you're a coach who was brought in to change a culture and you feel like you did that, by the way, he got a B+ in the NFLPA survey. The players like him. I don't think that means he's a good coach, but it certainly means that he thinks that he has good relationships with the players. But if he's hearing from family members and his family members are hearing from fans, they're seeing on Twitter, they're listening to Locked On Packers. And by the way, a lot of the family members, a lot of the friends, they're listening. They're listening. They know what's being said. They know that on Twitter, Fire Rich trends after every game. That it trends in the offseason when they're not even playing games. They know that. So if you're, in your 60s and you've been coaching for 40 years and you were already close to retirement a year or two ago and the Packers had to talk you out of it, then maybe at a certain point you just go, what am I doing this for? Why am I banging my head against the wall? I'm not going to get all the resources I want. They're not going to draft a returner for me. I already messed up the kicker thing a couple times. Why not just go somewhere else? The stress is less, the pressure is less. And guess what? Clemson seems like a beautiful place. It is still like major college football. A once proud program, not as proud anymore, but we're still talking about, if not a blue blood, like a purple blood. That's a really good program. You're still getting paid assistant coach money in college. There are assistant coach, like defensive coordinators in college making more than defensive coordinators in the NFL. Now, the assumption here is he's going to take a pay cut to go to Clemson, but it's like when you retire, but you go sit on, boards, or you have a part-time job, or you do consulting, and you get to play golf. Now, this is a real job. He's going to have to be in the office. He's going to have to be doing work. But special teams in college, it's just like the pressure's not the same. The commitment to it's not the same. And if Clemson loses a game and a kicker misses a kick, everyone's just going to go, well, man, college kickers. I mean, that's just, if you're a college football fan, that's just a thing is that college kickers are inconsistent. Like, when a college kicker misses a kick, go on Twitter, go on Blue Sky. College kickers is a full sentence in reaction to what happens on a college football Saturday or a Friday or Thursday or whatever. We know what the deal is. These are 19, 20, 21-year-old kids. The expectations are different. And this is value judgment neutral. I'm not being critical of him. I'm not judging him for making that decision. And I'm certainly, as someone who hears his fair share of vitriol online from fan bases. I'm not going to sit here and say that I ignore all of it and that it never affects my mental health. And I never think about it more than I should. And it never distracts me from spending time with my family or being present somewhere where I would rather be present than thinking about what, Joe 65734 said to me on Twitter. Now, Rich is not deep in these social media streets. But that stuff, like at a certain point, you're just sick of it. You don't want to deal with it. Why do I want to deal with that anymore? So you go and you take a lower stakes job, a lower stress job that's still a prestigious job. It's like working on Wall Street for 30 years and then going, to Florida to be a wealth management guy at a bank. You still have a job. There's still stakes. You still got to show up. There's still some pressure on you, but it's different. It's different. And frankly, that's okay. I think the Packers can be better on special teams this year. I think Cam can be an improvement over Rich Bisaccia. But I do think it's important that in this reporting, it is made clear, multiple sources, that this was not an FU to the Packers, that he did not drag this out because he wanted to stick it to Green Bay or because Matt LaFleur was not giving him what he wanted. He just wanted something else. And that's okay. And if you wanted him fired anyway, who cares? All right, let's put a bow on the Rich Bisaccia business and may we never speak of it again. Back tomorrow as we get closer to a new league year, get closer to free agency. We're gonna have a lot of stuff. It's gonna be flying fast and furious over the next couple of weeks with the Packers making moves, other teams making moves that affect the balance of power in the NFC. So we are still gonna be rolling here for you every day. If you're someone who wants to be in the Everydayer Club and aren't, first of all, why not? Second of all, I'm gonna give you a month free. Free agency is the code. Go to lockedonpackers.supercast.com and put in the promo code free agency, all one word, all in caps, no spaces. And now through March 15th, you can go ad free, keep the conversation going in Discord, join the club. You guys have been killing it. And I'm really happy that this group is growing and yet becoming, more together. You're starting to have people form relationships, form friendships. Hey, I know what this guy likes. I know what this guy's into. Let's have a conversation about the Packers. Like-minded folks. Why not? Why not? All right. Speaking of, subscribe to the podcast wherever you get podcasts. Make sure you're subscribing on YouTube as well. We had the squad show last night. That podcast is in your feed. We'll be live again later in the week. If you never miss an episode, again, the Everydayer Club is built for you. For those of you on video, we send you to the first ever 24/7 national NFL YouTube page. On audio, make sure you make your second listen Locked On NFL Draft or the Locked On Packers Squad Show so you can stay Locked On Packers.